This is part C of the lecture on trauma as we continue talking about this iceberg of trauma, as we've called it. The next stage in this process is guilt, and the person begins to wonder, have I changed somehow? Am I different? Is there something wrong with me now? Well, the answer is there's nothing wrong with you, but yes, you have changed. No, you are not the same person anymore. That's absolutely true. And of course, that leads to an incredible sense of rage. I'm not the same anymore. I'm not the same person I was. I want to be the same person. But the reality is they will never be that person again. And finally, in the process of talking with them and working with them, you get down to the core problem. And the core problem is a loss of their sense of self. Whatever it is that they have experienced has caused them to lose this sense of security, of everything's okay, I know how my life works, it makes sense to me. They've lost all of that now. And their life doesn't make sense. Their life is not safe. Their life does not work. And they lose their sense of their self-identity. And the process then of recovering from trauma is learning to create your new self, your new reality, your new normal in your new situation. It might mean learning to walk again. It might mean learning to deal with the fact that your spouse is gone. It might mean learning to deal with the reality that you have cancer. But whatever it is, you have to put back together a new reality because the old reality is gone. And accepting that, and accepting it without rage or guilt or a sense of loss, is an important part of the process of trauma recovery. Here are some of the symptoms of PTSD, of post-traumatic stress disorder. Flashbacks. The person relives the experience again and again and again, over and over. In their heads, they live through it. I can testify to this. I've been through a trauma in my own life where I relived that experience over and over and over. Traumatic dreams, which is what I experienced, are another example of a PTSD disorder. I fell through a sliding glass door, cut off my nose, cut up my hands, cut my legs to the bone, spent months in hospital, had to have my nose rebuilt with plastic surgery. And some weeks after, in fact, some months after the surgeries were over, I was having horrendous traumatic dreams in which I re-experienced the accident over and over and over at night, so that I couldn't sleep. I'd go to sleep, I'd see myself falling through the glass door, and I'd wake up in a cold sweat. I'd finally wear down, calm down, get sleepy again, I'd go back to sleep, I'd dream again. Over and over. I was suffering from PTSD, but 40 years ago, nobody knew what that was. Memory disturbance. The other extreme from reliving the experience over and over is that they may have blocked it out of their minds altogether and not remember that period of time. Their brain, their heart, their spirit, their psyche has chosen not to remember it, not to think about it, because it's too traumatic to deal with. Persistent, intrusive recollections. They may keep remembering things that are not about that event, not about that particular trauma, but things keep intruding into their everyday life over and over and over again. They may try to self-medicate with alcohol, drugs, food, sex. They may go on spending sprees where they go shopping and spend thousands of dollars. They're constantly trying to mask that pain. People can be very angry. We said earlier when we were describing the iceberg that one of the steps is rage. They are raging at this loss of their sense of themselves. And they are angry people. They're very irritable people. They may have a dazed or numb experience where they look like they're really not paying attention, because the reality is that they're not. They may have panic attacks. Panic attacks often look and feel like a heart attack. Heart speeds up, pounding in the chest, blood pressure goes up, face gets red, pain in the chest, shortness of breath, hyperventilating, shooting pains down the arms, just like a heart attack, but in fact it's a panic attack. Phobia formulation. They suddenly have a neurotic, irrational fear of all kinds of things. Crossing a bridge, going out into the open with other people. They may wash their hands 20 times a day because they're just convinced that they're going to get infected. They become hyper vigilant. They're constantly watching because they have lost their sense of security. They've lost their sense of any kind of groundedness, and now everything in their lives is frightening. And so they are constantly careful about everything that happens around them. These are all symptoms of people who are experiencing PTSD. In addition, exposure to trauma that is repeated is more disabling, as is those events that are unpredictable. If something else happens, of course, that just compounds the matter. And now I've got more reason to be scared, more reason to be hyper-vigilant, more reason to be hyper, and more trauma. Violation by another person is always worse than impersonal trauma. Complex trauma is premeditated and caused by others, usually someone known. If I have an automobile accident and lose a limb, that's a trauma, but it's a sad circumstance, an accident. But if I am sexually abused by someone who loves me, if I am beaten by my spouse, if someone has intentionally injured me in some way, that's even worse, because those people are not supposed to do that. I can't control what happened in the car accident, but I can't believe that someone who said they loved me has now hurt me. Then we have hidden trauma. When the trauma has been repressed, we refuse to admit it. And we just can't believe that this is happening. We refuse to believe it, and so we stuff it. Generally in trauma, there are two kinds of suffering. One is the trauma that is caused by the suffering and living with the experience in its aftermath. The second type of suffering is in the healing process. This is the pain that was too overwhelming to feel before. So if you're helping someone who's been through trauma, there's going to be the initial trauma and the consequences of that, but then will come later in the counseling process, in the ministry process, will come the pain that comes from having to deal with the pain I wanted to ignore. This is the pain I didn't want to feel, and now it's coming out. So that simply adds to the pain and suffering. You see, traumatic events are like thieves that take something from us. They have taken our sense of self, our sense of security, our sense of who we are, our sense of that our life makes sense and is together, has been stolen from us. And that's part of what makes this a traumatic experience. This ends part C of the lecture. This lecture will include a part D. Please download that now.